WNEW 102.7 FM, and online at talklinenetwork.com. Mashiach in the air, enriching your life and your Motzei Shabbos with joy, motivation, and inspiration. To advertise or to be a partner, please contact us at chabadinspiration@gmail.com. Join us and be inspired.
This is your number one station.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. Zev Brenner. Very privileged to have Yaakov Jason Lyons with us, chairman of the Wall Street Conference. Full confession, you know his father and mother, Simcha and Tiki Lyons, for so many years. We just had his daughter on. I'm talking about Yaakov's daughter on a little while ago. And we'll be looking at Jews, Orthodox Jews, in Donald Trump's orbit, and Orthodox Jews are back in Washington. So, Yaakov Jason Lyons, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Zev. Good to see you and good to hear you again, my friend.
Likewise. And again, I go back with your family many, many years, and your father, mother, terrific. I know you learned a lot from your father, too.
You know, I'll tell you, I'd like to start off by, certainly giving him a tremendous amount of credit. Today, a lot of people have become Republicans in the Orthodox world. I think could be about 99% or so voted towards Trump. I mean, a big number. But when my father and George Klein were active Republicans back in the 70s and 80s, it just wasn't popular at all. And, they probably took a lot of ribbings over the years for their activism in the Republican Party. But I think today's younger crowd, or even today's Republicans, owe them both a great debt of gratitude.
No, absolutely. They were trailblazers, and now things are back where you have, especially for the Orthodox Jewish community. The regular Jewish community, I don't know the exact numbers of how they voted this election. I suspect there was a bigger percentage of non-Orthodox Jews did vote for Donald Trump than for any other Republican candidate, maybe with the exception of Ronald Reagan. But the Orthodox Jewish community, probably around 90%, right? That voted for Donald Trump.
It was extremely high. In some concentrated areas, it might have been even higher than that. But even the regular Jewish vote did significantly better. We predicted about 4 to 8% better. And it may be even more in some areas. But the president made a lot of grounds in that particular area.
Now, Orthodox Jews played a role in the first administration, and the inner circle, again, this year has a lot of Orthodox Jews. We reported, I think it was the head of Vice President Pence's office at the time, that there almost was a daily minyan in the White House during the first Trump term. There was a sukkah, there was kosher food. So there was a lot going on. And I know behind the scenes, and you're part of that group, that part of the inner circle, that Orthodox Jews that are making an impact and helping the president, whether before his inauguration and even afterwards.
I think that will still be played out probably over the next couple of months. I'm sure there will be a few yarmulke wearing people and a few, let's call it shaitels in the administration. That's going to play out, but we certainly have some close friends. You can't take it for granted because these things could turn on a dime. But I would say we're in pretty good shape right now. And my only advice would be is complain when there's what to complain about. Over 4 years, there's a lot of things that are going to happen. Big ticket items for the Jewish people and small ticket items. And what tends to happen a lot of times is that when there's a lull and there's not a lot going on, we sometimes tend to manufacture problems for ourselves. And then we overly complain too much. And I would say the reproach I would give to Yidden is let's use our bullets when we need them, and let's not complain when we don't have something to complain about.
Now, can you tell us who some of the Orthodox Jews that are part of the inner circle that are making an impact, whether they get a position or don't, but there are people behind the scenes, like Yehuda Kaplun, for example?
Yeah, Yehuda Kaplun is, enormously active. David Scharf, who is a senior lawyer. He's a chairman of Morrison Cohn, was active in a lot of the vetting process.
He told me he almost had a position, a high position. He turned it down.
I'm not exactly sure where he stands on that, but he was certainly in the loop, that's for sure. So, and I think a few of the other ones are still getting played out. I wouldn't be surprised if Jared has some sort of behind the scenes role in terms of placing people. I don't think he's going to actually be part of the administration, but I think he'll probably offer some advice to who can be in there. But Kamploon, you're right, seems to be very close to Miriam Edelson, and Miriam Edelson is obviously going to be very active as well.
People like Aryeh Likestone, I heard, also are being bandied about as some possible.
I was with Aryeh at the inauguration. I think, listen, he would be terrific. He's great. David Milstein's name, I know, has been thrown around a lot also. He worked for DeSantis. And there's some good people that are circling. But, even some of the, let's call it non-Orthodox people. There's another guy, Scharf, in the inner circle, who I heard is a pretty good guy. I haven't met him yet, but I heard he's a pretty good guy.
I think he got a position. I just saw in the paper the other day.
Yeah. I think he's part of like the White House Council group, something along those lines.
What about people like David Friedman?
I didn't hear that David was going in at any. I didn't hear about that. It's possible.
I heard that he's not as strongly connected as he was.
I wouldn't know that firsthand. David is a neighbor-ish of mine. He lives probably less than a mile away from me. I do see him occasionally. But I haven't heard either way if he's going to have an active role.
What about Jason Greenblatt, who was there in the first administration?
I didn't hear. No, it's another name I didn't hear either. And by the way, that doesn't mean to say that they won't. I think somebody like Elizabeth Pipko might have a role at some point. She was active the first time around. She was the person who orchestrated the Rebbe's visit, the visit to the Rebbe's kever. So she's, she was definitely part of the inner circle last time. And I think at some point she might be again.
Do you know if the president plans on going back to Queens to the Rebbe's grave?
I didn't hear that. That would be interesting. I mean, it certainly worked. That's for sure. The first time I know Ivanka and Jared went, and then the second time, I don't know if anybody went, and maybe that had something to do with it. But certainly the Rebbe's got a lot of kaichas, that's for sure.
Right, and I'm sure I saw he really looked like, when I'm talking about President Trump, he really was into saying that Tehillim there.
He did. He was there with Howard Lutnick, who's another Jewish person in the inner circle. And Howard looked like he was into it also. Yeah.
Now, what about anti-Semitism czar? I heard different names bandied about. I heard Dov Hikind. I've heard Shabbos Kestenbaum. I've heard Howard Jonas. I heard other names that are being mentioned. Is any movement on that?
I submitted Lizzie Savitsky's name just to be part of the inner workings of it. I do speak to Alan Dershowitz quite often, and I'm sure Alan is going to have a lot to say in terms of that role.
He doesn't want that role, he said.
I think it might have been offered to him. It's possible, and maybe he's just not up to it. But he certainly is someone that the administration would lean on for advice in that particular area. But I don't think a final decision has been made yet.
Now, you have been involved behind the scenes, and I'm sure leading up to inauguration and selection of people, there were a lot of jockeying for positions. What was it like behind the scenes?
It was a little bit like everyone's kind of trying to get to the next level in life. You have people that came late to the table that were trying to pay their way up, which typically happens. And then you have some loyalists that were there from the very beginning. And then you have people that were there the first time around, and for whatever reason, they fell out of favor with the president. So I would say an example of someone that I'm close to is Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi and I started talking almost 3 years ago, and she worked her way into the inner circle. I think they referred to her actually as one of the Avengers in that type of meme scenario, describing the president's inner circle. She starts her confirmation hearings on the 30th. And I think it would be absolutely terrific if she ends up getting the position of head of intelligence. She's a very intelligent individual. She's very warm. She's very caring. And she's certainly somebody that will always look out for the Jewish people. And I think she'll look out for everyone that is in a position that needs help.
I think so far the president has done well with getting some of his nominations, some of them controversial, to go through.
Yeah, you know, Hegseth was
touch and go, right?
Yeah, I was with him Monday night, and had some time with him. He was stoic. He was very serious, and we have one or two friends in common. We were talking about them, and you know, I have friends that are very close to him. I'm trying to cultivate my own relationship with him, but I think he's going to sneak through. Yeah, I think he will. Kristi Noem is somebody that I've known for a while. She actually invited me to go hunting up in South Dakota with her, which is not something Orthodox Jews typically do. So I didn't take her up on that. We go shopping usually. That's one of my father's lines. But she got confirmed, I believe, this evening. And Pam Bondi, who's been a dear friend of mine for a long time, Pam is, I think she'll sail through the process and she'll end up being our next Attorney General. Pam is terrific. She's very firm. She's very smart, and she's very kind, which is a very rare combination for an Attorney General. So, you know, we're very happy and pleased with a lot of those selections.
Now, how does it work? You're part of the group that makes recommendations for different positions in the
No,
administration?
I had made some recommendations to the vetting committee. I probably brought 6 or 7 names. I personally was not part of the vetting committee, but I'm close to a few of the people that are. And some of them are going through the process right now. But it's not easy, you know, for every one position. There's probably 5 or 6 really good candidates that have been narrowed down to. So some good ambassadorships have come up, and a lot of the speakers that come to my conference, actually probably 3 or 4 of them that were at my last conference ended up getting ambassadorships. So we will have some nice representation around the world as well.
How did you get involved to be part of this inner circle where you're making recommendations and really close to this throne of power?
You know, I would say it's a long process. I will go back to probably the 1980s when I was a younger man, and my father was enormously active behind the scenes. I would say one particular trip that stood out was a trip that we made to Israel sometime in the 1980s, and my father brought Jesse Helms, who was arguably one of the most powerful senators in the United States. But he didn't have a very good track record in terms of Israel and the Jews per se. On that trip as well was Marty and Chick Hatt. One of them was the United States Senator from Nevada, and Roy Cohn was actually on that trip with us, who was Donald Trump's mentor. So there's some significance that he was on that trip as well. And the purpose of the trip was the Hacks were, I think, they either donated something in Israel or they were doing some sort of event in a synagogue in Israel. But I believe my father's agenda was to try to get Jesse Helms to become an Ohev Yisrael from a Sonei Yisrael. And that was accomplished. His track record changed after that trip. And it showed that, you know, one person's advocacy could really make a difference. And, you know, just a couple of interesting notes. I didn't necessarily appreciate it at the time, but Jesse Helms, I believe, was the chairman of the Agricultural Commission at the time when he was in the Senate. And my father took me and Jesse Helms and the other people to Ariel Sharon's ranch. And I have pictures of myself picking grapes with Ariel Sharon. I had no idea even who he was, quite frankly. He was a large man and he seemed somewhat powerful. But Moshe Aarons, we used to have breakfast with every morning. And only later did I realize, I mean, we used to go to Israel. Ehud Omer used to pick us up at the airport. And there's just countless stories. I mean, one story I'll mention real quickly. My brother's David's bar mitzvah was in 1983, and literally during the bar mitzvah at the King David, my father got called away by Menachem Begin, and my father had to leave his own son's bar mitzvah with Senator Danforth, who was with us for the bar mitzvah. And, you know, you usually don't leave your own son's bar mitzvah, but he did. And I guess many years later, we understood why.
What happened? What was the occasion that he had to be called away?
You know, I just would assume there was some security issue that Israel had to deal with. And I think, you know, sometimes people make their own mazel, but a lot of these United States senators and governors and congressmen from Missouri ended up becoming very powerful. Danforth was, I believe, an 18-year relationship my father had with him. And he was very close to Senator Kit Bond for a long time, Senator Jim Talent. And probably his most notable relationship was John Ashcroft, who spoke at my bar mitzvah, just to show you how far back that relationship goes. And he ended up becoming the Attorney General of the United States. And if you can somehow YouTube the old confirmation hearings, when Ashcroft was basically in front of the Senate, you'll see a guy sitting next to him with a yarmulke. That was my father, helping him through the confirmation hearings. So there's a long history. So if you're asking, getting back to your question about, certainly, you know, he paved the road, and the history behind that is my father was in a yeshiva called Chaim Berlin, and he was very close to Rav Hutner. He was a Talmud of his, and Rav Moshe Sher asked Rav Hutner if there was a bacher, or a young man, that he could cultivate for political reasons, and he basically chose my father. And that's kind of how he got his start in politics. There might have been something with my great-grandfather, Louis Raskus, because I recently was sent a photo of my great-grandfather and FDR on the back of a train, which looked like a campaign stop. So there might have been a little bit more history before my father as well.
Are you writing a book? Is that anything in
No, I tell you, I think at some point we might collaborate with some pictures and maybe, you know, put something together. But I don't think my father is either. You know, I think I don't know. I just think it's one of those things where, you know, I don't think he necessarily did it for any covet or anything. You know,
what I'm saying, but you have access to history, and including
yeah,
what
you know,
that would be a fascinating story.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the answer is I'm not opposed to it, but I don't know. I find a lot of people like to look at pictures, so maybe something with pictures and a little blurb under each one or something like that. I've gotten very close to Roger Stone. He's become a very dear friend of mine. Roger is extremely close to the president. So that was one. Tulsi I became very close with, and Pam, and you know, a number of people. Had a nice conversation with Kash Patel on Monday, and he's going to be the head of the FBI, and I, you know, represented to him that I would like to have some back channeling with him for the Jewish community as well. So we have a well-receptive audience over there in Washington, and we should use it for good things, you know, just to
Do we
try
know
to-
who the Jewish liaison is going to be to the president?
I don't know yet. I'm not sure there's going to be. Calhoun, I heard, was talking about putting a committee together, and it was going to be a combination of a few different people with Jewish backgrounds. I know he met with my daughter a couple times in Washington, and she might be part of that committee, but it hasn't been finalized yet. But I think it will be in the next couple of months.
Definitely have to have you back again. Yaakov Jason Lyons, chairman of the Wall Street Conference. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for what you're doing behind the scenes. And again, you know, I'm so happy to hear that Orthodox Jews are part of the inner circle. It's important.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Baruch Hashem, it's a better situation, I think, than what it was. And I don't get overly excited when things don't go the right way, and I don't get overly depressed when things don't go our way. So I try to keep an even keel, and we should continue having a lot of bracha and hatzlacha.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. We'll look forward to having you back again, and keep us informed of what's happening.
Thank you, Zev. Always good seeing you, my friend.
Likewise, Yaakov Jason Lyons here on the Talkline Network. When we come back, we'll speak to Giddy Grinstein. He's a negotiator, and we'll look